At the end of the last video we said white's best move depends on what black is planning to do. Checking both sides' perspective is a habit definitely required in order to get to the master level. Just a quick reminder of what white is preparing. We said the king goes to g2, the rook to e1, the queen either to d1 or c2, the knight goes to d2, then to f3, then e5 if possible, and the bishop goes to a3. Keep that in mind while moving to the black's positional issues. It becomes quickly obvious that the situation is equally bad, only without the doubled A pawns. So immediately we are thinking of how to improve one by one piece in black's camp. Starting with the rook, we see two ways to make it better, and in both cases we are asking how to get to the E file. Many of you are thinking why not to strike against the white's king, storming it with the pawns, g5, and use our rook in the upcoming kingside attack. But for the sake of this lesson, we'll just pretend that such option is not there. Now, the rook can get to the E file either by moving the g pawn first and then rook e7, or via h8 and then to e8. Which way is better? Well, it's not easy to say. Means not before we check what is going to be happening with other pieces. Our pieces and the opponent's as well. Now, before we get to the correct answer, I'd like to ask you to make a guess, and before the end of the video you'll find out is your solution correct. Now, moving to the knight. Using the well-known method, we're asking not where to go with it at the moment, we can't actually go anywhere, but where do we want to eventually end up on? Now, thinking of the safe and realistic squares, there are two interesting outposts we can immediately spot: c4 and e4. I don't know what is best in current situation, and you don't need to know that. Better is to know the argument behind the guideline that we should go for the more central outpost if we can choose, of course. It is simply better because the pieces are better in the center than standing somewhere outside. Because from the center they either control a greater number of squares or more important squares than from a flank. So in this case we choose e4. There were good suggestions to improve the knight in the comment section of the previous video, all saying that we should get the knight to e4. One way is via c7 to e8 to f6 and then to e4, which also requires moving the c7 pawn. 5 moves total. The other way is by moving the king, then knight b8, moving the queen somewhere, then knight d7, then knight f6, and finally to e4. 6 moves total. The way including c7, e8, f6 is faster, and this is normally how we choose. Now, just a little question. When getting the knight to e4, we said we are going to use c7, e8, f6, but why not via d6? It seems like more central, plus we can keep an option of even getting to the c4 square if it turns out maybe in some position that it is a better option. So why not going via d6? Pause the video, it is one of the key moments of the lesson. Let me give you a hint. If you want to, you can just skip this part. If you'd involve white's plan into the equation, what's gonna make the knight d6 idea worse than knight f6? I'm not gonna reveal the answer yet. Instead, let me ask you to check the same when it comes to moving the rook. Is it better to end up on e8 or e7 at the end? It requires same number of moves, but still one is better than the other. How come? Let's think again of where white's bishop probably is going to go meanwhile. As we know, the best for that piece is to get to the a3 square, attacking the squares e7 and d6. White bishop suddenly turns out important, and we as black lose either a move with our rook, moving it from e7 to e8 once being attacked by the a3 bishop, or we allow white to trade the poor bishop for our powerful monstrosity on d6, about to go to e4 or c4. Of course, it would be a very powerful piece. What we can learn as a guideline from this is that while creating our own plan, we must involve our opponent's ideas as well. Now, before moving on, let's underline that for the rook, it is much better to go via h8 to e8, because the other way around, white eventually wins the tempo. It's not much, but it's still something. Now, moving to the bishop. It needs another place and better diagonals, and we have two options. Either going to h5 via f7, or to b5 via d7. The second is asking for an extra move, moving the queen away, which should certainly be noted. Now, which place seems better to you? Choose one again and stay with me, the answer is coming soon. And one more time, the solution is standing behind the question of what the opponent's intentions are. It takes no time to realize how important for white is to get the knight to e5, and it can be done via f3, which our bishop can control if standing on h5. So that's the best way to activate the bishop. Now we have almost everything done. What we do not have yet is what goes first. It is not all the same. For instance, it doesn't work the same if we do something for the rook and then for the bishop, because say we play g6 in order to get the rook to e7, which we know is not the best option. And suddenly we discover that the bishop is stuck behind the g6 pawn and can't reach the critical h5 square. Now, in order to answer the question of what is black's priority, we need to think again of the white's intentions and what's the part of the white's plan that we really don't want to see happening on the board. And since we concluded that we can bypass white's bishop on a3, our focus should be either on the enemy's rook or knight. Now, the rook on the e file can easily be neutralized by our own rook on the same file, or by our knight getting to e4, blocking the file. And if white rook goes to the b file, instead, it won't pose any threat without any other piece joining the attack. But if white's knight reaches the e5 square, it is going to be extremely annoying. So there it is, we must, before anything else, prevent white's knight from getting to e5. Thus, getting our bishop to h5 is the priority number one. Now, going back to white, as promised in the previous video, I don't want to dive deeper into the situation because there is nothing to learn from getting to know the right move. Instead, we just want to conclude the way of thinking required here and provide the guidelines. And obviously, as we got to know black's intentions as well as ours, we'll assume that the black's bishop's supposed to run to h5, while our job is going to be to at least try to be faster than them with our knight reaching the e5 square. That's the key to this position, which both players should be prioritizing. Feel free to write a comment. I'll see you again with another position on the board very soon.